Alright guys, welcome back to the course. Now in this lecture I'm going to show you how you can install Android Studio on a Windows PC. Okay. Now if you have a Mac, please skip this lecture and go to the lecture where I talk about how to install Android Studio for a Mac. This lecture is particularly for a Windows PC. Alright. So first things first, open up your your Google Chrome or whatever browser you have, and let's search for Android Studio. Alright, and you should find a link to a site called developer.android.com/studio. Go ahead and click on that. Alright, once that loads, click on Download Android Studio. Obviously, read all the terms and conditions, which I already have, and then I'll click I have read and agreed to the terms and conditions, and go ahead and download. And I will just wait for that to finish. Alright, so once that's finished downloading, let's go ahead and click on it. Alright, just leave the default values and click next to install. Just leave the default button values and click OK. Again, here in the setup, the default values are just fine. It's pretty much your preference how you would like to have the interface. I like to have it white, but a lot of people have it dark. So choose Darkula if you like. I'm going to stay with IntelliJ. Alright, and finish. It's going to download a whole bunch of files, but you can go ahead and click finish and wait for the download to finish. Alright guys, so once that's done, downloading and installing, you should have this screen with an Android Studio menu here. So go ahead and click Start a new Android Studio project. I'm just going to create a small test project. I'm not going to start with the actual course project, but for now just a test one. Just click Empty Activity, just leave everything default and click Finish. So let the Android Studio build our project, and we'll continue once that's done. If you click down here where it says indexing, you will bring up a kind of a progress bar. We'll just wait for that to finish. Alright guys, so it looks like it's finished. It took quite a while on my computer, but now it's done. It has finished building, it has finished checking the project. We have just a test project, so we're not going to run that. That's pretty much pointless. But what I want to do, just to give you a quick tip before we actually start the course, If you click here, right at the top right side, an icon that says AVD Manager, click on that. And you should get a screen similar to this. Basically, this screen is for creating an Android emulator. So basically, a Android device that you can run on your laptop without actually having to connect your laptop to a physical device, right? So this is a virtual device. So let's go ahead and create our first virtual device. And you can see here, Android Studio comes with a bunch of emulators pre-installed. You can actually choose, the one I usually use is the Nexus 6P, right? So let's go ahead and click that and click Next. And there's a bunch of Android system images available. So what I usually do is I use two images, right? So I use the Oreo image, right, which is API 27. The reason why I use this one is because it has kind of a higher API level and it's more geared towards higher end devices that are on the market. I don't usually use the last Pi or Q. I usually use the Oreo, which is fine for my needs. And I also use a Lollipop. Okay, Lollipop is basically an older version that is common for lower end devices or older devices. And if we want to be backwards compatible, so that means our application should be able to run on all Android devices out there, we need to test our application on Android Lollipop as well. So I'm gonna let you download those. Once those are downloaded, you just click Next, and it will set up the virtual device for you. And you will see further on how we use that that virtual device on our code. Before we end this lecture, I want to give you one quick tip. Basically, whenever you go through the lectures, right, and you go through the code and maybe you get an error while Android Studio is trying to build, right? Sometimes it happens that Android Studio gets a bit confused in building the code, in compiling, and so on. So the first thing that I usually try is basically you go to the build menu here and you do a rebuild project. What that does is basically clears all the caches and rebuilds your project from scratch, and that can sometimes fix your problem without actually needing any code changes, right? Of course, if you have an error in your actual code, that won't work. You actually have to solve the error first. So I want to kind of give you a bit of a notice that coding is very, very sensitive to mistakes, right? So if you type something a little different by mistake, it will usually mean that your code will not build and you won't be able to run it, right? So be very careful. If you run into any errors that don't show up in the lectures, simply go back in the video, pause the video, rewind, and check that you have spelled everything correctly, because it does matter, right? So the code that I show you, the project that we're building will work. It will work in the way that I'm going to show you. If it doesn't work for you on your local machine, simply go back a few minutes, rewind the lecture, and make sure you have everything typed correctly. And of course, Android Studio will kind of give you a warning here on the lower side, an error message whenever something happens, so you can kind of know what happened, what is wrong, and what it doesn't like. So you can kind of pinpoint your error message. Alright guys, so that's it for this lecture. That's all for installing Android Studio. It's basically very simple. You just run it in its default configuration and it runs just fine for our purposes here. If you want to change a couple of things and play around with it, you obviously have under the file menu, you have settings. You can change a whole bunch of stuff for Android Studio, but for our purposes, we're just going to use the default values. So thank you for following along, and I'll see you in the next lecture.